Coming up on Network Africa, more than 100 people killed in Sudan as the United Nations expresses concern over clashes in the Darfur region. Ethiopian government says Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is momentarily back in office. Plus, the World Health Organization says existing vaccines should work against the COVID-19 Omicron variant. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. More than 100 people have been killed following days of ethnic clashes in West Darfur State in Sudan. Fighting between Arab tribesmen and fighters from the African Masalit community, backed by former rebels, have been going on for days. All the fighting in the Krainik area has displaced thousands, including across the border into neighboring Chad. The survivor of the clashes says armed men attacked their village and opened fire before burning down houses. Fresh fighting between the communities began on Sunday, killing at least 55 people. In the meantime, the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, has expressed concern over escalating violence in that region, where thousands have been displaced in November. Several people escaping conflict have also crossed the border into neighboring Chad. The office of Ethiopia's Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, says he is back in office momentarily following a successful completion of the first phase of what they call Operation for National Unity in Diversity. Prime Minister Abiy's office announced this through a statement. The Prime Minister had been at the front line in the ongoing civil war, which started in Tigray last year. Federal troops have been fighting with rebels from the north. Well, in the recent past, Mr. Abiy announced victory as the federal troops recaptured areas that were formerly under the TPLF's control. Well, the rebels have, however, been insisting that they have strategically withdrawn from those areas. Meanwhile, the UN Secretary General's Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict is urging the government of Ethiopia to promptly sign into agreement with the UN to prevent and respond to conflict-related sexual violence. This comes as there are continued reports of targeted attacks against women, girls, boys and men in Tigray, Afar and Amhara regions. UN spokesperson Stephen Dujarric relayed the message.
Ethiopia, the Secretary General Special Representative on on sexual violence in conflict, Pramila Patten, is urging the government of Ethiopia to promptly sign into agreement with the United Nations to prevent and respond to conflict-related sexual violence. Ms. Patten noted that the extreme brutality and sexual violence has been the hallmark of the conflict in Tigray. She expressed deep concern over the continuing reports of targeted attacks against women, girls, boys, and men in Tigray, Afar, and Amhara. This includes the systematic use of sexual violence as a weapon of war, a form of retaliation, punishment, humiliation, and stigmatizing people based on their real or perceived ethnic identity. She reiterated her urgent call to all parties to the conflict to immediately cease every form of sexual violence and end hostilities to pave the way for an inclusive, gender response ceasefire and peace-building efforts.
To health matters now. The World Health Organization says existing vaccines should still protect people who contract the Omicron variant from severe COVID cases. Well, this comes as the first lab tests of the new variant in South Africa suggest it can partially evade the Pfizer jab. Researchers say there is a very large drop in how well the vaccine's antibodies neutralize the new strain. But the WHO's Dr. Mike Ryan says there's no sign Omicron would be better at evading vaccines than other variants. Nigeria's Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Ehanire, says Nigeria will no longer accept vaccines with short shelf life from donors. The minister, in a statement personally signed by him, says the country had enjoyed the generosity of several, mainly European countries, who have offered the country doses of COVID-19 vaccines out of their stockpiles free of charge. He, however, said some of them had residual shelf lives of only few months after deduction of time to transport, clear, distribute, and deliver to users. He goes on to say that donation of surplus COVID-19 vaccines with expiry shelf lives to developing countries has been a matter of international discussion. He, however, advised that donors need to begin the process early enough and create a well-oiled pathway for prompt shipment and distribution through the COVAX and AVAT facilities to reduce the risk of expiration. The minister says although Nigeria has utilized most of the over 10 million short shelf life doses of COVID-19 vaccines so far supplied to it in good time, the long-term measure to prevent such incident is for Nigeria to produce its own vaccines so that vaccines produced can have at least 12 months to expire. Let's have more discussions on this now. Joining us is molecular virologist Dr. Akiela Ishaku. Thank you so much for speaking to us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Let me begin with the WHO's message that the existing vaccines that we have should be able to protect people who contract this Omicron variant. How confident can we be in the efficacy of existing vaccines against Omicron?
Yeah, for WHO to come up with a very strong position of the existing vaccine covering the newest strain in town, which is the Omicron variant, it shows that it has gotten data from a lot of vaccine manufacturing companies like Pfizer, like AstraZeneca, and like Sanofi. And so if you carefully look at the technology behind the COVID-19 vaccine, it is an mRNA technology, which covers a wide range sequence. In that technology, for the production of the new vaccine, for the first variant of the virus, it covers the length of what we refer to as an amino acid sequence nucleotide. So it is a technology that can be able to take care of even emerging variants in the future. So I think it's worthwhile. I believe and I stand strongly by what the WHO said about vaccines, that the vaccines that are currently available can be able to take care of the Omicron variants.
Well, now, what do you think of Nigeria's health ministry's response to, a report that came out and said, 1 million vaccines, over 1 million vaccines wasted here in Nigeria, but, the minister has come out to say it's because these vaccines had a short shelf life, and it also seems to be that, people are not coming out to receive their jabs for over 1 million to have been gone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you look at the logistics in vaccine supply, you will discover that from the shipment to, the testing of the vaccine efficacy to the acceptability of the vaccine efficacy and all what have you, it takes 3 to 4 months for us to accept, for us to receive these vaccines. And then once you remove 4 months out of the 12 months of the shelf life of vaccine, you will see that you are left with just about 8 months for you to actually make use of the vaccines. And sometimes the vaccines even arrive even 6 months to the expiration date. And so I agree with the minister that there are a lot of logistic challenges, and they have been discussing with partners that and donors that gives Nigeria gifts of vaccines. But I think the way to go is for us to have build capacity, which we'll have, and then begin to initiate vaccine production in-house so that we can have vaccines that have longer shelf life, and then the efficacy too can be ascertained. Most of these vaccines, once we start producing them in-house, the efficacy will be ascertained, and also it is going to be peculiar to most of our strains that we have in Africa. So I agree with him, we have vaccine logistics challenges, and I agree with him that efforts are being made to discuss with partners on the way forward. And Nigeria has also rejected a lot of vaccines, from donors that have short shelf life and expiration dates.
Indeed, that's one of the things the minister says, that, the long-term measure will be for Nigeria to start producing its own vaccines. But we'd like to thank you, Dr. Akiela Ishaku, molecular virologist. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Two other stories. The Archbishop of Canterbury, the Most Reverend Justin Welby, is condemning the UK's inclusion of Nigeria in its COVID-19 red list without justification. Most Reverend Welby says it is a travel apartheid and is calling for the restrictions to be scrapped. He's urging the UK government to abolish what he describes as the morally wrong and self-defeating red list. The United Nations Secretary General had a few days ago described the action of the UK government as travel apartheid targeting poor nations. Nigeria's Senate also insists that the travel ban is discriminatory and an attack on diplomatic relations between the two nations, and called for the UK to remove it. The World Food Programme, WFP, has warned that some 36 million people are expected to be food insecure in 2022 in West and Central Africa between June and August 2022. Now, this is a 24% increase compared to the year 2020. According to Olosib, a senior research assessment and monitoring officer for West and Central Africa region with the WFP, food insecurity is expanding in the region. The number of people in emergency keeps increasing.
Talking about 36 million people in West Africa and Cameroon included, who will need humanitarian assistance during the upcoming lean season. And if we add Central Africa, we are talking about 38 million people. People are worried mainly for three reasons in this region. They are worried we see food insecurity expanded in the region, and the raining season was not good at all. The harvest is bad in many locations, many areas. There is no enough water and pasture for livestock. I was talking to pastoralists few months ago, and they used to sell cattle, right, to buy cereal, mainly millet. And this year, with one cattle, they managed to get maximum 5 bags of cereals. Last year, same time, same period, they were able to get 7 bags of cereal. In the coastal countries, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, people see the activities of armed groups, coming toward them, and people are worried.
The figure is very high. More than 70 million people are in such a situation in the region. And unfortunately, the situation is expected to significantly deteriorate during the next lean season between June and August 2022. And the population and the number of people which will be experiencing critical food insecurity situation would really reach 35.8 million people in the whole region. This is a figure we have never reached before in the region. So that means the situation is extremely critical.
Still to come on the program. Tanzania-born Nobel Literature winner Abdulrazak Gurnah faults the UK over its treatment of migrants. Please stay with us for more details.
Coming up this week on Just Nigeria, we bring you available information about Omicron, the new COVID-19 variant already detected in Nigeria. Also, we discuss vasectomy as a birth control option for men. The street pitches in. For these stories and more, watch This Nigeria from the BBC and Channels Television.
We live in a world where breaking news is constant commodity. What you miss in the headlines becomes developing story. Keep up with the news behind the news, developing stories, and the feel-good stories. Keep up with your world, right here on The World Today.
Welcome back to the program. South Africa's parliament has failed to secure the two-thirds majority it needs to amend the constitution that will pave the way for land expropriation without compensation. During a debate on Tuesday, the ruling African National Congress Party MP Matole Moshega, who chaired the committee that drafted the bill, said Parliament had the opportunity to address a crime against African humanity and dispossession of land. However, two main opposition parties, the Economic Freedom Fighters and the Democratic Alliance, did not support the amendment. The country's white minority is believed to have a disproportionate hold over land, with a few thousand white commercial farmers possessing the most fertile land. Joining us for more on this is our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia. Hello, Betty. Thank you for speaking to us. With the Parliament now not being able to move forward with this constitutional amendment, tell us, what does this mean for the bill?
Well, this essentially brings to a close about a three-year process where you had a committee, parliamentary committee that got people to make input, went around the country speaking to people. So the bill is essentially dead, but all the parties involved, those who voted for, those who voted against, say they will continue fighting. Remember, those who voted against are strange bedfellows in some way. The EFF, which is calling for land expropriation without compensation, voted against this for a different reason that the DA, probably the Inkatha Freedom Party, voted against it for. In the case of the EFF, they're saying that there is a departure from the radical stance that they have of zero compensation, land expropriation without compensation. And then they're talking about nationalization of land. And the ANC is saying, the ANC, which is leading this bill, is saying, like, look, this will come with complications because there are already black people who have fought so hard and have managed to get the title deed of land that they now own as theirs, those who have succeeded. So now this may take them back. So reactions have been varied, but then again, it comes down to the numbers where the ANC, which needed 267 votes or two-thirds of parliament, managed to get only 204 votes, especially because the EFF, which was their ally initially in this quest, voted against it. But everyone says they will keep fighting. The EFF says they'll continue fighting. Probably another bill will come. But those who have reacted are saying, look, this may have its good sides because not many people were on board when the committee looking into this, when they were taking input. A lot of people complained that their own input, especially those who may be affected, by this I mean like the white landowners, who said their input wasn't considered, and so many issues raised along the line. But the ANC-led committee was determined to get to the bottom of the Section 25 amendment. But analysts are saying maybe there's a good sign so that the depoliticization of the issue will happen, so that the real issues will take place where those who are really affected, or the real issues of landlessness of the black people in the country will be looked at.
About those varied reactions that you mentioned, from different quarters, because we know there have been protests against this land seizure amendment.
Well, on the political side, the reactions have been varied. The ANC is disappointed. Their former ally on this matter, the EFF, and a few smaller parties, they didn't come to the party. The DA is happy. They're saying it's good for constitutional respect or the constitutional order of the country, because the Democratic Alliance, which is the major opposition party, believes it will be detrimental to the country. And the Inkatha Freedom Party, which is a mostly black party as well, had been against expropriation of land without compensation. And they're saying it's not what the country needs. So the people are watching, hoping this will be resolved, and a more balanced economy, a more balanced land picture will somehow be fashioned out in the country.
Then, thank you so much, Betty. All 4 university lecturers in Morocco have appeared in court accused of offering students better grades in return for sex. They are charged with incitement to debauchery, gender discrimination, and violence against women. The 5th lecturer is to appear in court on charges of indecent assault and battery. The scandal is focused on the Hassan I University in the city of Setat, but it's only the latest in a series of allegations of sexual harassment at Moroccan universities in recent years, in which most of them have not gone to trial. The Sahel is the place where it is most obvious that there is a direct correlation between the climate emergency, conflict over scarce resources, and forced displacement. That's according to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, who was addressing the UN Security Council. He says 90% of the 84 million refugees and displaced persons around the world are in developing countries. He adds that many of these countries face the perfect storm as the consequences of COVID-19, climate change, and conflict come together and often create situations of forced displacement.
We sadly all know the international system never seems to have been so prone to failure. And international failure has many faces. Instability and insecurity, these are the issues that you deal with every day. But also famine, disaster, collapse of states, which you hear very much about. But also, and here is my message today, one of my main messages, forced displacement. Humanitarian, in spite of the work that we do and we are doing, cannot replicate the role of states. We cannot save economies. We cannot make societies fully work. We are not a replacement for real engagement and political solution. The apparently growing inability of the international community to make and build peace obliges us, humanitarian organization, refugee organization, to work more and more in situation of active conflict, of rampant crisis, with rising expectations, once again, on what we can deliver, but in reality, decreasing possibilities to actually deliver. For 13 months, we have now struggled to deliver aid to people in danger amidst two sides that are fixated on a military outcome, but have been so far unable to achieve it and have not heeded your appeals for political negotiations.
The winner of this year's Nobel Prize for Literature has described as inhumane the responses of the UK and France to migrants trying to cross the English Channel. The Tanzanian-born novelist Abdulrazak Gurna said he didn't understand why British ministers referred to them as criminals and thieves when some in the government come from immigrant families themselves. A record 26,000 migrants have crossed the Channel from France to the UK this year, where dozens others have died. Mr. Gurna, who is now a British citizen, also expressed some amazement that the UK government had not congratulated him on his Nobel Prize, wondering whether that was because he was an immigrant from Africa.
It's as if they have had no experience of refugees. It's as if this is a new thing that hasn't happened before. When Europe, of course, let alone other ages, but Europe over the last 50 or 60 years or so, or more, maybe 70 years, has had experience of wave after wave of refugees who have turned out to be major contributors to the societies that has received them, important contributors. Just look at the government. You know, the woman who sits there and says, these thieves, these criminals, these whatever. Her own parents were people who arrived in England only a generation ago and have made good. It seems strange to me. It's a lack of, well, humanity. In Britain, these panic waves that come every few years, the target changes, but it seems there is yet always another panic of another group of people who are coming to overwhelm us. Caribbean people, Pakistanis, Indians, then at later times it's Roma, people from Eastern Europe, then Afghans and Syrians, etc. It seems something that is almost like orchestrated. Well, I believe it is.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Adigoki.